After watching this video, you'll know everything you need to know to pick the best champions for the current patch. Every tier list is overly complex and you have trouble finding your main. For this, we split every role into different categories. As an example, you can see AD carries and mages being played in the Dragon lane. And to provide you with a better idea of how powerful they are, we separated them into their own classes. For the Baron lane, we take a look at the carry and the tank roles. Let's start with the carry tier. Carry champions are placed higher if they have the ability to split push and teamfight alike. Champions such as Camille, Wukong, Yone or Jax are really powerful with Divine Sunderer and having access to Hullbreaker or other teamfighting items. The only champions that you can find in the S tier that are AP based are Kali and Gwen, and these deal very well with Hullbreaker champions simply due to the nature of their damage sources. Riftmaker enables both of them to deal with any kind of thing in their way, and Gwen especially is a hyperscaling demon that will take over teamfights with just one-tapping people and is pretty powerful in the sideline as well. The champions listed in the A or B tier scale just substantially worse than champions in the S tier and cannot really compete with them. However, there might be a few exceptions with emergence of new builds. For example, Urgot with the Muramana build might be able to take over in a lot of matchups he used to lose in the past. In the tank tier, Garen is just the most versatile champion in terms of soaking damage and dishing out single target damage on demand. Any other champion that is placed below either doesn't provide similar levels of power for his team or just is a lackluster champion with the exception of Shen. He features a decently powerful laning phase and is able to teleport to his AD carry, which is the main star of this current patch. Any other champion below this just doesn't feature as much impact as they did before simply due to AD carry item changes. Maybe Narcissus can make the difference with the slow, but that's literally it because Singed is just, well, Singed. He doesn't really do much against AD carries. For the jungle role, we have also separated them into the carry and tank tier, and here we start with the carry tier. The SS and the S tier picks usually scale very powerfully into the later stages of the game and or feature a good early game. Specifically, AP champions are very broken in this game because of how they scale and how magic resist scales in this game. Few champions gain barely any magic resistance per level, and therefore itemizing into magic resist is very costly and comes at a hefty price, which will put you behind most of the time without saving you in the first place. Basically, every AP champion that features high burst is very broken, and other champions that deal damage over time, for example Lilia or Morgana, are placed slightly lower. On the other hand, you have bruiser champions that are high stat or other assassins that will just take over games with their sheer strength and itemization choices. Any of these bruiser champions can either go into Mana Mune, or they go into Divine Sunder or maybe even Triforce if they're really fed, and then just go super tanky and they can't be killed while they kill the enemies. Any champion you'll find in the A or B tier is less consistent than the counterpart in the S tier. For example, yes, a Pyke is broken and yes, a Pyke can work, but a Pyke is inconsistent compared to our other champion that is way more consistent in the way he approaches the game. Gragas will always find value and will always be broken regardless of the game state, and Pyke will fall off if he cannot get any executes or ganks in because he's a spam ganker. For the tank tier, we have Rammus as the bane for AD carries. This champion is single-handedly the best when it comes to facing AD carries thanks to Thormail and his high armor amount. Next to him we have Shen, which is a supportive choice, which is able to support your AD carry, overpowering the other AD carry. Another champion that is a tank and carry alike is Nautilus. He can either go full AP or tank and just provide crowd control to deny the enemy's champions. And again, you see a clear theme as to how this list operates. Champions with the highest amount of reliability are placed higher, and champions that are not as reliable are placed lower. For the mid lane, we have the Mage, Assassin and other tier, and here we start with the Mage tier. Mages are usually very powerful as they are non-committal. The less committal a champion is, the more powerful they are against AD carries. Any champion that has to overcommit into an AD carry makes themselves very much susceptible to getting killed by them. So champions that feature traits that allow them to either go in and play from behind are very powerful. In this very instance, we have Vex in the very pinnacle of the tier, and below this we have Zoe, Orianna and Veigar. These champions control the tides of a fight before going in, but feature a way of destroying enemies in an instant when the enemy makes a mistake. Champions placed in the A or B tier are less reliable or feature not enough damage or just scale way too slowly for the current game pace and cannot match the enemy's strength at any point. For the Assassin tier, we need to look at the base stats and overall powerfulness of champions that are able to just leave lane and get things done. Zed and Pyke tower about everyone else when it comes to getting things done, and other champions such as Diana or Akali or Katarina are just a little bit slower but yet powerful enough to clean fights up. All of the champions in the S tier have the ability to clean up fights on their own, and all champions below have way more difficulty in doing so because of how their kit operates. In the other tier, we highlight lane dominance as a factor when we determine the ranks within tiers, and Jayce is just the pinnacle of scaling and damage at the same time. Other champions such as Akshan, Jhin, Corki and Lucian are still lane bullies, but they are substantially worse than Jayce at this moment in time. However, they are still better than the other choices below in the A or B tier, which are usually just counter picks into certain matchups. Blinding any one of these champions in the A or B tier can be very difficult for you, because the champions that are in the S tier or above will either outpace you or outscale you at the same time. Now let's talk about the gemstone of this tier list, and it's the AD carries. We have the AD carries and mages separated from each other, so you don't make the mistake of thinking they're basically the same, but we'll start with the AD carries. At the AD carry pinnacle, we have Jhin with the immortal shield bow, Infinity Edge and Lord Dominic's regards. It's super high scaling, super defensive, and it's very difficult to get you killed. Every champion below this tier, for example Tristana, Corki, Kai'Sa, Ezreal and Lucian, are just way weaker in what they're doing, especially Lucian. The item changes didn't really benefit him too much, and other champions are just way stronger with these, and for this I'm referring to Corki, Kai'Sa and Ezreal. On the other hand, you have champions such as Zeri and Vayne who really didn't benefit as much from the item changes because they're way too dependent on their laning phase to go well. All other champions in the tier above are way more sufficient in dealing with the lane alone and not being forced to have somebody next to them to clear the wave. For this tier, it's all about scaling and making it safe to the later stages of the game to then carry the game consistently. For the mage tier, it's absolutely similar. Lux is the pinnacle of the mage tier, able to provide damage and utility alike in the form of shielding, rooting, and just scouting brushes. Other champions such as Seraphine and Veigar just control the zone and make it very impossible for the enemy team to play, and Ziggs is just Ziggs. You trying to do an objective and he just throws a bomb and then you're dead. That's basically the TLDR of Ziggs. The other champions below in the A tier take too long to scale or do too little damage into the current meta, and they're just not strong enough. In the support department, we differentiate between 3 different types: the engage tier, the protect tier and the carry tier. For the engage tier, we have Rakan as the pinnacle of that tier, and every champion below is less consistent or less overstat. Rakan is a champion that determines a fight before it even starts in an instant with a flashy combo. Gragas can do the same, Nautilus can do the same, and Galio can do the same as well. Not to mention that all of them feature relatively reliable forms of engage, as well as the ability of being a global presence in the form of Galio. And Thresh just hits you like a truck. Every other champion below, with the exception of Sett, is just way weaker and less reliable in the way of how they can play games, and therefore just weaker than the champions in the tier above. For the protect tier, it's about making your AD carry stronger and a more reliable fashion while denying the enemy any type of counterplay when it comes to them gunning you down. Janna stands at the pinnacle while denying every type of engage into her AD carry while granting him super high damage values. Soraka, on the other hand, keeps you alive while also protecting AD carry or bruiser you have on your team, and Braum literally makes it impossible for the enemy AD carry to even hit you in the first place. Lulu and Yuumi, on the other hand, are champions that are more centered around playing duo queue, and one of the most important things for this list is just overall laning presence. All the champions you have ranked higher have super high laning presence, and all the champions ranked lower have lower laning presence. For example, a Sona cannot even dare to compete with a Soraka or a Lulu or a Karma. It just isn't even remotely close, and even if the Sona gets to scale, she is still weaker than all the other champions in the S tier. Oh yeah, and all you have to do to be a broken support that utilizes auto attacks quite often is taking Relic Shield and Bone Plating, and you're absolutely busted during the laning phase. This is super important once you play a carry in the Dragon Lane, because your HP bar is the most important resource you have to trade around, next to the bone plating cooldown. Senna is just the most broken existence as a support in the Dragon Lane. Her damage output is unrivaled and her sustain is just unparalleled. Next to this, we have the proactive champion Pyke, who just runs around the map and is not about winning lane, he's about winning the game on other lanes, which is similar to a Senna to some degree. Similar to Pyke, Senna can also just leave the lane on level 1 and gank mid or Baron lane. But you need to understand that you need to have an AD carry who is able to farm from afar without getting themselves killed. Having a Lucian or Kai'Sa will probably get them killed if they're into a double poke or even into a Nautilus, because they cannot defend themselves, they cannot thin out the wave, and if the wave gets to crash into the tower, you'll just die. And that concludes today's video. Thank you all for watching, and if you liked the video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, but most importantly, come back for a new video where we reveal more secrets in WildRift. See you soon.